Many of you know Dr. David Adler. He was formerly the head of, and in fact he founded, the Australian Jewish Association. He retired from that recently, and the excellent Robert Gregory is now the CEO of the Australian Jewish Association. Now, an interesting story. About a year ago, Dr. David Adler, you will remember, was invited to go to Israel to speak at an anti-Semitism conference. And this was when we were first getting really concerned about the amount of anti-Semitism that was happening in Australia. There was a conference convened in Israel. Dr. David Adler was the Australian representative. He went over there and he met and talked, and we mentioned that, and we talked about that on this show about a year ago. What happened at that meeting was Dr. David Adler was chatting to a member of the Israeli parliament, Simcha Rothman, and he invited him to come to Australia. Simcha has relatives in Australia, and David thought, wouldn't it be nice if, Simcha, come over to Australia, you can do a little talk, you can speak to some of the Jewish communities and reassure them that, you know, anti-Semitism, it flares up, but it'll go away, don't worry. So a good message to bring to the Jews of Australia. Simcha Rothman was then, a tour was organised, and guess who steps in? Tony Burke, who cancelled Simcha Rothman's visa only last week, which was disgraceful. We talked about it on this show. And that then led to, among other things, the recognition of Palestine by Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong and so on, for Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, to actually go on Sherry Markson's show, excellent interview, Sherry, and express his displeasure and disquiet with Australia, quite rightly, in my opinion. Well, it all began with Dr. David Adler asking Simcha Rothman to come to Australia. David, welcome back to Outsiders. You thought you were in retirement. It lasted a couple of weeks, and I've dragged you back onto the set. Now, what did you make of the cancelling of Simcha Rothman? And more importantly, what did you make of Benjamin Netanyahu's rebuke of Albanese this week?
Well, I guess this is a bit of a mea culpa moment, because it seems that I personally and the AJA have contributed to a diplomatic crisis between Israel and Australia.
Stop inviting people to come to Australia, David.
Can't do that.
How awful.
Simcha Rothman, you're right, I met him in Jerusalem. We had a private meeting at the wonderful Jerusalem Botanic Gardens cafe. And let me tell you, he is a gentleman. He is intellectual. He heads a really important committee of the Knesset. And prior to October 7, the biggest issue in Israel was the judicial reforms. We think that we've got left-wing activist judges in Australia. In Israel, they're on steroids, even worse. So he was trying to do something about that. And yes, it was subject to debate and controversy. He has a distant relative in Melbourne, and for a whole variety of reasons, he expressed interest in coming to Australia. We thought it was a great idea. It's fascinating, almost surreal in Israel, that they are very concerned about the anti-Semitism in Australia, despite being under threats, etc. So we arranged it. And it's hard to believe that a democracy would cancel a serving parliamentarian, a senior parliamentarian from a democratic country, but that's what's happened.
And what did you make of Benjamin Netanyahu's comments?
Look, I actually think that for a long time, Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel was highly restrained, as we've also discussed on this show. Almost immediately after the election of the Albanese government, there's been what I'm now calling a political intifada against against Israel. Australia's been conducting a political intifada against Israel. We produced a document, I have a copy of it here, which lists, at the time, the top 20 hostile decisions. It's now been updated, it's more than 20. And with crossing certain red lines, repeatedly cancelling prominent Israeli visitors, and foreshadowing the recognition of a state of Palestine, it was seen by Israel, and including the Prime Minister there, as a red line. And he expressed on social media and wrote to Prime Minister Albanese some harsh words, and frankly, they're entirely justified.
James.
Tell us, more about the double standard that is applying here with this government. Because on the one hand, they're denying this visa here, but on the other hand, we've seen many reports of people with far more radical views being allowed to come to Australia, but they're on the other side. And you put that, in the broader context of the 3,000 visas handed out to Gazans, and, the very double standard way we've seen, everything from Penny Wong calling for restraint after October 7th to Tony Burke saying, well, your strength doesn't come from how many children you bomb or whatever, which is a disgraceful activist comment. Explore for me a bit more this double standard that this government seems to have on this issue.
Look, it's double standard. It is an obsession, James, that almost from the day they were elected, there were a campaign against Israel. They removed the limited recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital, the only country where Australia says, oh, you can't nominate your capital. And you're right, on October 7, within hours of the unrestrained terrorism beginning, Penny Wong announces that Israel should show restraint. I don't believe there's any other country on the planet that has been subject to this sort of campaign from Australia.
Rita.
Labor believe that the criticism from Israel is not damaging at the moment. They're saying that there's been a shift in public opinion, and so that's probably emboldened the likes of Tony Burke to make the comments he made. What's your feelings around that? The fact that they're not just... They seem to be immune from this criticism, no matter how justified it may be.
I think you're right, Rita, and I think there are two reasons. Number one is that this has a lot to do with domestic politics, that Labor is seeking to lock into its base the socialist left and also the Islamic vote. And those blocks are way bigger than the Jewish vote. So you can throw the Jewish community under the bus. But the second is, you say there's been a shift. Social media is very important as an influential platform, and the pro-Israel voices are outnumbered hugely by the anti-Israel, pro-Hamas voices. And it's influential, particularly to the younger people who don't have a good education on history. So I saw an AI analysis that for every pro-Israel video that's out there, there are 54 anti-Israel videos, and often crossing the line into anti-Semitism. Yeah. So I think they're the two factors which have been brought into the mix.
Well, I think, David Adler, you are in retirement, but I think the Australian Jewish Association has a lot more work to do, and Robert Gregory is doing a great job there, and thank you for coming on Outsiders today. And I just wait for Donald Trump to finally look at the Australian list of things that he's going to discuss with Anthony Albanese. I can't wait for that. That's it. We'll take